Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 252 of Screw the Commute podcast. We're here with Lia Bozonelis, and she is a Hollywood-based writer and producer. And we met through our deal or no deal mutual friend, the fine number 9, Patricia Cara. And listen to this. Over the past year, Lia's star meter has gone up 768,140 points on IMDb. And I looked at it very closely. And the only time it went down a little bit is when word got out that she was doing this show. But anyway, we're going to bring her on. I got a little surprise for her because everybody that listens to this knows how I usually open and bring on the guests, but I got a little extra surprise for Lia. All right, I hope you didn't miss episode 251. Ashley Monk is the star pupil in my school, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but Ashley in the first month started making $1,100 a month on the side. Second month got up to $3,000. Third month, $3,400, and she just quit her job. Her dad had spent $80,000 on some crap education, and she's taken a crappy job, and she just quit, and she's up to $6,000 a month and has 4 months to go in the school yet. So she is just love her to death. She's only 22 years old, and she's on her way. So that was episode 251. Now, I hope you didn't miss grabbing a copy of our automation ebook. It's at screwthecommute.com/automate free. And of course, everything we have clickable, including Lia's great stuff, will be in the show notes. This is episode 252. And you go to screwthecommute.com/252. But I want you to grab a copy of that ebook. That ebook are techniques that I've used to handle as many as 150,000 subscribers and 40,000 customers without pulling my hair out. And we figured it out a couple years ago. This is no BS. Just one of the tips in the book has saved me 7.5 million keystrokes over the years. And so you really got to, this book will allow you to handle customers 100 times faster and make a lot more money. So grab it at screwthecommute.com/automate free. screwthecommute.com/automate free. And while you're over at Screw the Commute, grab a copy of our podcast app. It's screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. And not only do you get the podcast app, but when you get an app, people expect you to know how to use them, and then you're fooling around for an hour trying to figure it out. Well, we don't roll that way. So we have complete screen captures and a video to show you how to use all the fancy features so you can take us with you on the road. That's screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. Now, our sponsor is Ashley's School, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. It's a distance learning school, and we're now opening it up for in-house classes after 11 years of running it. And it teaches legitimate techniques to make a great living, either working for someone else or starting your own online business, or both. Why not both? So check it out at imtcva.org. And a little later, I'm going to tell you about a quiz you can take over there that's going to make you mad. It's the 7 ways colleges and universities are ripping off students. And yeah, I know you've been brainwashed for 100 years that college degrees are critical, but hey, times have changed. And boy, when you watch this or take this quiz, you're going to really be mad. And I don't think I'd want to mortgage my house to pay for some of the things that are going on in the collegiate world nowadays. All right, let's bring on the main event. Lia Bozonelis is an LA-based screenwriter, writer, and producer who was head writer and producer of the feminist sketch comedy series, Sorry, Not Sorry. And she had her feature, Eat, Drink, and Be Married. That's Eat, Drink, and Be Married. Premiere around the globe. And she's currently writing a psychological thriller. That will shoot later this year. Hey, she's worked for the famous English filmmaker Ridley Scott, George Clooney, Netflix, HBO, and a bunch of other rad places. I mean, I looked at her thing on IMDb. That's the Hollywood kind of resume place. And wow, this girl is the bomb. And she's here to talk about the business and her charge to help women rise within it. And I normally start this off, everybody knows this, Lia, so don't respond yet. I normally start this off with, Lia, are you ready to screw the commute? All right, but I'm going to have a little bit of switch up here. This is the first time I ever did this, because I did a little research on you, and I know that you are multilingual.
Uh-oh.
So I am going to attempt to do my opening in 3 different languages and have you respond. So here we go. Here's where, Lia, are you ready to bousiller les trajets?
Oui.
All right. Lia, are you ready to scopare il pendolarismo?
Si.
All right, and this is the hard one. This is Greek. Lia, are you ready to vendoste ti metakinesi?
Nah.
Nah, that sounds like no. So,
well done.
How did I do?
You did great, Tom. You did wonderfully.
Oh, boys, thanks so much for coming on. I know it's going to be a lot of fun when we get these Hollywood folks on here that are so creative. I mean, you wrote some of these complete features, and it seems like you're having a great time out there in Hollywood. So tell everybody what you're doing now, and then we'll take you back and see how you came up through the ranks.
Okay, cool. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Tom. I have heard great things about you, and we share a very dear mutual friend. So this is great fun for me to be here today.
Awesome.
Hollywood can definitely be a blast, but it can definitely be difficult. It is never a straight line. There are so many ups and downs, but right now is a very fun time in my career. I have just been hired to write a big psychological thriller with this director named Will Wernick. He's had a bunch of movies come out. He had Escape Room a couple of years ago. He has a big thriller called Follow Me coming out this summer. And this will be his 3rd feature. We're doing it together. It's dual perspective. So we tell it from both the male point of view and a female point of view. And it's sort of it's called Ghosted. And it is sort of in the vein of Gone Girl or Girl on the Train, but a little more grounded, a less melodramatic. And we're very excited about it. We just turned the final draft in last week, and our next step will be casting, and it's fully financed, and we'll be shooting it later this year. And we think in New York City. So we're very, very, very excited about it.
Well, wow. So tell me more about that. So you said you were hired to write it. I mean, is all the ideas already there and you're just putting the actual dialogue together, or did you have to think up the ideas, or what does that mean that you were hired to write it?
So it can mean many different things. Sometimes you're given a fully fledged treatment, which could be 30 pages of a synopsis, and then you just have to execute on that with dialogue and action. In this case, there was just a nugget of an idea. And the producers, Jeff and Kelly Delson, sat us down and we talked about it, and we knew that we wanted to do a psychological thriller. We knew we wanted to do it loosely in the world of online dating. And had to be somewhat, and Will and I have both had many stories to contribute to that. Right. So we just basically, what we did was we spitballed, and we sat there and we brainstormed, and then and kind of, thought up a general direction. And then Will and I went off and, sort of created a story treatment, and then workshopped that with Jeff and Kelly. And then we were off to the races, putting down, 150 pages off of this one little nugget of an idea, one little sentence. And then we have been honing it and revising and getting notes from our most trusted, friends in the business who are wonderful with story. And now we've honed it to a beautiful 115 pages that we're really excited to share with the world.
Okay. So no spoilers here, but I mean, generally what's it about?
Well, it takes place it's kind of what I said. I can't give away too much, but it's a psychological thriller in the world of online dating. And at the core is a revenge story. So that's about all I can give. Yeah, but hopefully next time I come back, we'll have some casting updates and I can share, I can tease a little bit more.
There we go. So it's kind of, as soon as I heard online dating, I kind of laughed because I do, I teach internet marketing skills, and we talk about membership sites. And I tell people, well, who here could immediately compete with Match.com? And nobody raises their hand. But then I show examples of all these other dating sites that are out there. There's farmer dating, there's gluten-free singles, there's tall people, there's little people meet, but my favorite of all, and I know you're an advocate for women, and I'm no way making fun of women here, but this one just cracks me up. It's called Women Behind Bars, and it's a membership site where guys become pen pals with women. And so what's interesting to me is they never tell you what the woman is in there for. She could have hacked up her last 3 boyfriends, but this one, it just cracked me up. They have their bio on there and their interests and everything. And remember, they're in jail, and this one said is willing to relocate.
I mean, what could go wrong?
I know. And she says, I love to travel, so anyway, I can't wait to see that. And it's called
when I'm not incarcerated. Yeah.
So yours is called Ghosted?
Ghosted.
Okay. Yes. Awesome. And then when do you think it might be out?
Out is a different story. Shooting it, you know, what I always tell people is, people always say, "Oh, what have I seen that you've done?" And I don't think the mass population is aware that there's about 1,000 steps between script and getting the movie not only made but distributed. So, but in our case, we're very lucky. We are fully financed, and we already have distributors biting. So, I think, if we're lucky, we'll be shooting it, sometime within the next 6 months, and then it will take a few months to edit, and then we'll have to see what the distribution rollout is. But my guess is that it'll be sometime in 2021.
So there's a big difference between like direct to video and major like on-screen release, right?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no, to be honest. The streamers like Netflix and Amazon are pretty much functioning like major distribution studios, like a Universal or a Sony. So even if it's quote straight to video, it doesn't mean that it didn't have the same amount of sweat equity go into it. It just means it doesn't have the same sort of strategic distribution rollout that a film like this would, with the intention being it's a theatrical release, meaning it would go into theaters around the country and the globe, as opposed to just, hitting a streamer or a video on demand.
Okay. Now, when you said streamers, I couldn't help but think of that line Ricky Gervais got all of that hell over for, hey, if ISIS started a streaming service, you'd be calling your agents.
It's so true. I have a lot of feelings on him, but he always manages to crack me up when he hosts. So it's just, he is a ridiculous human, but very, very funny.
So tell us about the Sorry Not Sorry, and then the Eat, Drink, and Be Married. Tell us about how those went.
Sure. So Sorry Not Sorry was a really, really fun time in my life. It was a feminist sketch comedy series that I did for Astronauts Wanted, which is a Sony-backed company. It premiered on Go90, which was kind of Verizon's answer to Netflix or Amazon, which unfortunately the platform didn't have much longevity. So we made 8 full episodes, 24 small episodes, and we premiered and we did great. We were really, really excited about the show, hoping to be renewed, but there were issues with the platform, so it just didn't go that direction. But we are looking for a new home for it. So I was head writer of that, and we staffed up with a mostly female writing team. We still had a couple of guys in there for some nice perspective shifts and whatnot. And what we really liked about it is that we didn't just go for the cheap jokes. We really tried to be extremely inclusive and ooh, who's that?
Yeah, that was Abby. She said, "Yeah, I like those cheap jokes." She said, "Leave them in
there." Sorry to offend. Yeah. So we really just tried to make it extremely inclusive and woke and fun and current, and we worked very, very hard to get those episodes tight. And, each one was thematically very different from the next. And it would be a combination of very funny sketches, what we call man on the street. So our stars would go and interview people on the street, and
You actually called them man on the street in a feminist show?
In our case, woman on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, because it starred four female comedians who are all on the rise and wonderful and doing big things in the industry now. And our director was terrific and stylistically kind of changed it up with every sketch. And, we were very, very excited about the show. And, what I always tell people is the reason it was one of the most fun times in my life is because we'd sit in that writer's room and we'd have sore abs every day because we would just be laughing all
right.
day long from start to finish, even when we had hard days. And of course, it's work at the end of the day is still work, but that really didn't feel like work because it was just such an extremely fun and funny time.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean. I wrote professional comedy for 6 straight years, and
oh, wow.
every day was just you just laughing your butt off and
it's
having
true.
a good time. It was one of the best times for sure. Now, do you get from the business aspect? Does a head writer get residuals? Do you have a part ownership in the show? I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can structure things, but so how do you get paid for those kinds of things?
So in my case, I was a contracted writer. So my fee was my fee, and I would get paid, weekly. And I was also consulting producer on it. So in this particular case, they did it. There were many, many companies involved, many guild signatories, but we were on a shoestring budget. So, my fee was just my fee, and it was negotiated ahead of time. So I wasn't going for back end or points or residuals or anything like that. I was just more focused on I knew there'd be, again, so much sweat equity going into it week to week and running that room. And we had very long hours from about 10 till 7, 10 till 8. And then when I was the on-set writer, so I was with the production for the last month or so of it. And so again, for me, it was more important to get the titles and be on set than it was, to work out. That's what I was fighting for more than anything. And that worked to my advantage.
Now, I wonder, is there some kind of ratio that the producers keep track of, like the number of lines actually used by you divided by what they paid you?
No, definitely not. It does not work that way. Not in the least. We are all equal contributors to it. As head writer, you oversee the room, you keep it structured, you keep it moving, you make sure the writers are contributing and you're mentoring and whatnot. But at the end of the day, everyone was dynamite, and everyone was doing a kick-ass job contributing to the show. And so, I'm very proud of us, and we were very much a team.
And it seems like when somebody could say something and it stimulates something in someone else.
Oh, of course.
Then that's how it
all the time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There would be times where we'd have an idea, and someone again would give a nugget of an idea, and another person would say, "Hey, I want to go run with that," and then they'd go off into one of the little incubator rooms or whatever, and gestate this idea, and come back with a fully fledged sketch, like an hour later, and and sometimes I'd be hitting my head against a wall saying, "Hey, this is a great idea, and I don't know how to execute on that," and someone else would have a good idea, know how to do that. So it was very collaborative in that respect.
Wonderful. Now tell us about Eat, Drink, and Be Married.
Yes. So after the show wrapped, I had sold a couple of concepts to Reel One Entertainment, and that was one of the first ones that I sold, and that ended up becoming a full-fledged feature film, which was very exciting. Stars Jake Foy and Jocelyn Houdin, and that went out. That premiered around the globe in Asia and Europe pretty much towards the end of 2019, and we are locking US distribution. So it actually has not come out here yet, but hopefully it will be coming out. They usually try to release movies like this because it's in the vein of a wedding movie. The hot season for that, is like late spring, early summer.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that will be coming our direction. And one more thing I can talk about next time we're here.
All right. So did you say you have ownership in that film?
I'm not a producer on that film. That one, I sold the concept, and then we put a writing agreement together. It was a 6-step writing agreement. And I I finished executing on it, and then it was completely, that was one of the ones where you just have to say goodbye to your baby because you no
Yeah.
longer own it.
Yeah,
So
there you go. So
so
so when you do that, you just go home and you sit down and think, okay, I got to write this thing now. So what's your style? How do you work? In other words, if you're working something on by yourself.
Well, it really depends on the project. In this case, it was fun to write because it was a lighthearted romantic comedy. And, that world, I knew that Reel One makes movies that are intended for a more, how can I say this, like straight edged audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I would have to be writing between, within some pretty specific parameters. Think like a slightly edgier Hallmark type situation.
Okay. All right.
So even though my writing tends to be a lot edgier than that, I knew what this job was, and I knew that I would have to again write within these parameters. So there are all these sort of unspoken rules, or rather spoken rules. Like you can't see death, but you can talk about death, certain things like that. So I was, it was a cute little concept about putting a wedding back together, and the idea came to me, and then I sat down and I went over the idea with the producers, and then first step was writing the treatment and then getting sign off on that treatment, and then I was off to the races on the first draft, second draft, third draft, polish. And then they had to do a budget pass on it, meaning some of the locations that I wrote in were too expensive to shoot because this one was under $1 million. And so then, at that point, you just have to say, okay, well, I put everything I had into this, and now it's not mine anymore. Now it's up to the director and the stars. And I actually have not yet seen a final cut of the movie. So I am equally as excited as the rest of the world to see it. And my family, always says, well, when can we see it? I said, when can I see it?
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it yet either.
So you had to think up all the characters and all that?
Yes, all the characters are mine. The idea is mine. This sort of was born out of this. I was reading an article about someone's wedding that went south, and they didn't know what to do with all of the vendors. They had already bought the flowers. They had already, hired the caterer. And there is actually a service where people will just turn around and donate those items to people in need, bring them to hospitals, to childcare facilities, to nursing homes.
But this is normally after a good wedding happened, right? Not a wedding that went bust.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. But yes, for the most part, it's after a good wedding happens. And so my idea was, here's a couple in peril who has all of these things, and then, two unlikely people are enlisted to sort of, donate all of these items, but in the process, try to bring the couple back together. So.
Oh man, yeah, it's got to be a blast doing all this stuff. Do you ever?
Oh, it's really sweet. It's also, this one was so light and cathartic that it was, even though I tend to go a little darker, edgier, whatnot, this was just a really fun exercise for me because I got to write in this funny, lighthearted, romantic space every day for several months.
All right, now, did you pull anything from your real life?
A little bit here and there. Yes. Sometimes, sometimes I try not to write any character true to form. It would be mostly, composite characters pulling from different people in my life, different experiences in my life and whatnot. So.
All right, so let's take you back. And so you've got quite a history. You taught English as a second language. You were a speechwriter, I think, for somebody one time. So how did you come up to get where you are today? And you are a Screw the Commuter, although I'm sure, that doesn't mean a whole lot in where you live in Los Angeles. Because
no, it does. It does.
Oh, it
also,
does?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
Because, the climb in Hollywood is never that short. There is never, you always hear these things about an overnight success, and it's just once you dig a little deeper, you're like, oh wait, they've been in the industry 15 years, 18 years, whatever it is. So.
All right. So how'd you start out?
Well, let's see. So I went to school in Washington, D.C. At George Washington. I studied journalism, so I knew I always loved to write.
Are you from that area, or where are you from?
I grew up in Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl.
A Jersey girl, okay.
Jersey girl, yeah. So, and then headed down to D.C.
Did you know Snooki?
Not personally, but I feel like I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from DC, I studied in Florence, and that wasn't quite out of my system. So after school, I taught English as a foreign language, which was great for my writing skills, just observing all of these different people and cultures and whatnot.
Hmm.
And I was around Italy and a little bit in France. Came back and I got my first job at what at the time was the Time Warner AOL Foundation. So this is dating myself. I mean, that's how long ago that was. And I worked for a couple of wonderful men there, and one of whom went on to New Line Cinema and asked me to join him. And New Line was, a very robust studio at the time. It was an exciting time for New Line because it was falling on the heels of The Lord of the Rings, which is that franchise essentially saved that studio. They took a huge risk and bet so much money on that franchise, which paid off in spades. And then along with that, they had The Notebook, Rush Hour, all of these different, smaller films, sleeper hits, things that were really causing the studio to explode. So it was a very fun time for me to be there. And while I was working on the PR and communication side, I really wanted to get into development, the creation of stories, and helping oversee the writers and whatnot. But I was New York based, and there were very few development jobs. So sort of as a compromise, I just talked to the development department and I asked them to just be reading every single script that was coming through the doors. And then from there, I thought, okay, well, I can do this too. So I sat down and I wrote my first screenplay on nights and weekends, which I had no business showing anybody. It was like a 300-page romantic comedy, which for context, most romantic comedies should clock in around 95 to 105 pages. So, but I gave it to some senior executives there at the time, and they were very polite, and this was a printed copy, so I basically dropped like a 20-pound object on their desk, and they took the time to look at it, and they said, listen, you have to learn everything there is to learn about screenwriting still, but we can tell you have a voice. So that was all I needed to hear, really, to just kind of keep going after it. And from there, I went to work at Picture House Films, which Picture House at the time was, New Line had an art house division called Fine Line. Fine Line merged with HBO Films and New Market Pictures and became this Picture House or whatnot. And I learned from Bob Burney, who's one of the best in the business. So it was really cool learning the big commercial side of the business at New Line, and then learning the art house side of the business over at Picture House.
Oh, and this was still in New York, or
this was still in New York. Yeah, and Weinstein Company was there, New Line was there. New York had a little bit of a studio presence at the time.
Now, does the LA taking a lot of credentials from New York? Do they kind of look up their nose at them when you hit LA? Is there any kind of rivalry between the cities?
Not really, because at the time, every single one of these companies had offices in both places. And the reason that New Line had such a strong presence in New York was because, well, our co-CEOs were New York based, but also, one of them was, but also we were doing a lot of theater adaptations. So we needed someone who was, close to Broadway and had access to those stars and those vehicles for storytelling. So, I wouldn't say that people necessarily looked up their nose at it, but once I got to LA, it was a whole different ball game. We can put it that way.
Right.
So, I had put in, a lot of time at Picture House, and I knew
all these times you were technically an employee at these different
correct.
Places, right?
Yes, I was a full-time employee working on the communications side of things, and which was fun because then you got to work the premieres and really sort of learn. Again, they were the New York units were so small, you really did get to learn all different facets of the business. And this was many years ago, and all of the assistants sat in a row. It was called the row, and we're all still friends all these years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really cool. And a lot of the New Liners get together in New York and LA every single year as a little reunion. I mean, it was a magical place. And so, now it's been folded into Warner Brothers and still sort of acts as an entity with, under the New Line name, which has a very different and specific brand right now. But at the time, it was a really special place to be. So long story short, or long story long, I decided at Picture House that I really wanted to write full time. So I moved back in with my parents, left New York City, moved back in with them in New Jersey, and lasted a whole of 3 weeks before I thought to myself, well, I need a job because this isn't going to pay me for probably a decade. And I was right. so, um, so I started just doing a lot of freelance writing, which led to a full-time staff writing job at Fortune magazine. And then Fortune was looking for young people to incentivize to live in, areas that maybe not everyone wanted to live in. And so from there, I lived in New Delhi, India for a while.
Wow.
That was a crazy time in my life. I was covering hard news, so news as it was unrolling. And we were having a big Fortune 500 conference there, and India was celebrating 60 years of independence, and we were tracking the prime minister. And it was a really, really special time as well. And again, that all helped inform my writing. And then we had the economic collapse happen. Most of my division was wiped out. But at that time, I had a lot under my belt. I'd written probably 5 or 6 screenplays, plus, managed to put away a lot of money since I wasn't paying rent and I was, being taken care of overseas and making a really great income. And so at that point, I did the tech beat up in Silicon Valley for a bit, and then the environmental beat in LA, and then kind of landed in LA. And I thought, okay, I want to really make a go at this. So that's when I got to LA, and that was 11 years ago. Just in the beginning of February.
So that was about 46 jobs you just ran.
Yes.
There's
about 10,000 more I'm about to tell you about. So I'm glad you're keeping count. And 11 years ago in LA, and I could take you through all of the various calamities in setting up projects and watching them gain financing, lose financing, whatnot. I will not bore you with all of that, but let's just say I was starting to set up projects and I was speccing, meaning I was writing for free, but for some really big heavy hitters in the industry. For Chuck Roven, Atlas Entertainment, the good folks who brought you the Wonder Woman franchise and the Batman franchise and whatnot. And so I was getting a lot of attention, but I was having trouble getting anything off the ground. A lot had changed too. When I first entered the business, there was something called a spec market where you could write a screenplay and hit the lottery and sell it for, high 6 figures. And then the writer's strike happened and everyone was just looking for packages, meaning you had to not only have a brilliant script, but you had to have big stars attached to it and a hot director. And so the entire landscape changed. The entire way you go about filmmaking changed. So I had to sort of recalibrate at that point, and I was a little sick of operating in a vacuum. So I just, I got my first representation. I took what they call the water bottle tour, meaning, you have a script that goes out, gets some heat, and then you meet with, all the various producers in town, or as many as you can stomach. And I did that for quite some time. And, I had some
you're a freelancer at the time, technically?
Freelancer at the time. So to that point, in order to keep the lights on in my apartment, running tandem to this, I was doing a lot of consulting work. I started as a reader. So I was just reading volumes and volumes of scripts coming through the door. I read over at HBO. I read at Odd Lot Entertainment, a manager and production company called Anonymous Content.
And you're reading to see if it's got any kind of merit to pass it on to somebody else, or what?
Yeah, I was basically reading to see if it would fit, whichever company's overall slate, if it was worth, pursuing. And so I was a gatekeeper in that respect.
I see.
And I was reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scripts, which was great for my own writing, right? Because it's exercising the same muscle in a way.
I would have started slipping $100 bills in the pages.
Hey, I wish I worked for you then. Wish I got your submission. Yeah. And then from there, I got a call from Odd Lot Entertainment. I got a call from Ridley Scott's company saying, we need someone to do a little bit more of a robust job for us. We have a piece of IP and intellectual property. We need someone like you to come in and break it down and, write a treatment and make it look sexy and put it together. And I did that for, several properties for them. And that was really exciting. And to work with Ridley and to work with that team was really exciting.
That was freelance. Were you an independent contract? This is
yes.
So you're technically screwing the commute. You're working for yourself at this
For
point.
sure.
Yeah.
I've been screwing the commute for years, Tom.
Okay.
Years.
Well, the reason I alluded to screwing the commute in is especially important in Hollywood because of the traffic.
Everyone's screwing the commute.
Yeah.
Oh, and traffic is enough to explode your brain.
Exactly,
so
right.
Yeah, it was yes, I've been screwing the commute in more ways than one for a long time. And so, yeah, from there, I got a call from Smokehouse, which is George Clooney's company, to come over and do the same thing. So I did that. And then I got a call from, this was really interesting. This was over 4 years ago now. I got a call from Netflix and they said, hey, we're a tiny little department and we're thinking of making some original films, very small, under $3 million. Will you come join us and do the same job over here? And again, that was contract. And
then you read The Irishman, right?
Well, I ended up staying there almost 4 years, and our tiny little department of 3 people making 1 or 2 films under $3 million has now become what it's become.
Right,
we joke
right.
that, Bird Box, with the huge success of Bird Box, was basically 2 hands reaching out from your TV, like making you watch it.
Right.
It was, Netflix is everywhere. And so, my little independent department is now, I think, $35 million and under, which is not quite so indie.
Yeah.
And, and the teams are split into budgets. And, the volume in which I read there was insane. I was reading, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of scripts a year, if not thousands. Sometimes I'd be reading 2 books in a day for them,
Wow.
they were just the volume of which was churning. But it was interesting because, when I was head writer of Sorry Not Sorry, I actually kept my job at Netflix. So it was a very, very, tough time in my life because, I would be reading all morning, running a room from say 10 to 8 if we weren't on set, and then come home and read at night. But I really,
wow.
in order to sort of, keep my foot in both doors, I wanted to not lose that job and not lose that momentum either. And as well as, I'd been writing more pilots, I'd been writing more features. So I effectively felt like I was working 3 jobs at the time and was just grinding all of the time. And then, obviously started to feel a little burnt out after that. So when the show didn't get renewed, I was still, writing pilots, writing features, but then I was fortunate enough to get a couple of sales on the feature side. And then the rest is sort of what I've explained. I have this film coming out and then hired on Ghosted. And then Will Wernick, the director of Ghosted, and I have formed this really nice creative partnership. So we're going to go down the line on a couple of bigger budget movies. And it's just a really, really exciting time, but it's not to say it didn't come out with, didn't come with a ton of hurdles, and it still does. And there are days that I feel like, oh, I'm on top of the world. And there's days that I'm like, you're terrible at this. What are you doing?
Now, it seems to me that, I've been ragging a little bit on the younger generation of being more entitled and not working so hard. I don't know how that type of person could do what you did. I mean, you worked your butt off multiple, probably 12, 16-hour days most of the time for years and years to get where you're at.
Years. Yeah, I don't know. We have this debate all the time. And one of the things that is quite the disparity in Hollywood is that if you come from means and you have no financial pressure on you, you have a much greater chance of succeeding. That was not the case for me. I have a wonderful, supportive family, but I had to just keep grinding and keep going. And you do burn out. And one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received was, if you can do absolutely anything else, go do it. And if you really can't, if you have to do this, then do it, but know that it's going to come with a lot of stress, headache, worry, and whatnot. And 18 years later, here I am, and I'm still doing it. I'm honestly very, humbled and proud of where I've gotten at this point, because it has been just so much sweat equity and a lot of fighting. I've been, kicked over more times than I can count. I've had the most ridiculous things happen to stunt me, things, losing money at the last second, people pulling out, stars having meltdowns, you name it, I've experienced it. And so one of the ways that, that I kind of show my thanks for where I am in my career is to sort of, put it forward. And I try to, mentor young people trying to navigate this business who are or were in similar situations as me, who, have the drive and ambition, and need to be working all the time to survive, and, need a little guidance and help navigating this, I like to refer to Hollywood as a circular firing squad that
Yeah,
you're just
right.
standing in the center of. So, yeah.
All right. So we got to take a brief sponsor break. And when we come back, we're going to ask Lia about collecting the money, or how that works in working this kind of job, and what a typical day looks like for her. But I'm kind of afraid to ask that question.
Be very afraid,
Yeah.
Tom. Be very afraid.
So folks, I mentioned earlier about the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia and the quiz I wanted you to take. So I want you to write this down, or check it out in the show notes. It's IMTCVA, Internet Marketing Training Center, Virginia, VA. .org/quiz. And even if this doesn't apply to you, I guarantee you know somebody, you've got nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and it's really going to make you mad, because it outlines 7 ways. And, I have a consumer advocate show in development in Hollywood called Scam Brigade. And so I'm very in tune with things that are fraudulent. And I swear a lot of these colleges people would be in jail for doing this stuff on the open market, but you've been brainwashed for 100 years that you absolutely have to have a college degree. Well, times have changed. Google, Apple, IBM, Bank of America, and hundreds of other big corporations have now eliminated the college degree as a prerequisite to apply. They want people with skills, not people that, got an A in art history. So take that quiz, and then open your eyes a little bit to the other potential out there. And I've told you about Ashley making money with the skills that we teach in my school that are in super high demand. I mean, every business on earth, small and large, has enormous internet necessary skills that they have to have. And most of the small businesses are pulling their hair out. So the market is massive. That's why she was able to go up to $6,000 a month in a few months, and doing it still part-time. So check it out at imtcva.org/quiz, and pass that quiz on to somebody that could save them hundreds of thousands of dollars and keep them from competing for jobs at Starbucks. So there you go. So let's get back to the main event. Lia is here. It's Bozonelis. Lia Bozonelis is the rising star with 768,140 IMDb points.
That's one way to look at it. Sure.
Yeah, I don't know what's that compare. I don't know how many I have, like 3. So Lia, tell us about the money, collecting the money. Do you ever worry about that? Is it stuff paid in advance? Is it, these are freelance jobs and you're working with a lot of people. So how do you keep track of all the money?
Yeah. What money, Tom?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, what money? No, it takes, as I've mentioned, it takes many, many years to get to the point in which these types of jobs monetize. And that's not just true for me. That's true for almost everyone I know who is successful in this business. So of course you can get the development jobs and the jobs on the business side of the industry, the W-2 full-time jobs where you are working to, realize these movies on behalf of other writers and directors or whatnot. But if you truly want to be a creative like me, then you have to be used to having good years and bad years, terrible months and good months, and times in your life where you don't know how you're going to pay your rent. Anytime I'm in a situation where I can sock away money, I do it as best I can. But it remains. It's you take the good and the bad, right? So here I am creating a lot of content and getting, I've had 24 episodes of television made. I've had 4 episodes of a web series. I have my first feature coming out. I have 2 more features on deck that are hopefully shooting this year. But, am I rolling in it? No. Will I be?
Rolling in what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But will I be, will this eventually all monetize and sort of catapult my career to that other echelon of writers and directors who are living a more comfortable lifestyle, yes, I think that is absolutely 100% in the trajectory. So to answer your question, I still take contract work. Up until very recently, I effectively had a full-time job at Netflix in conjunction with all of my writing, just because I'm a person who craves stability and, likes keeping the lights on in my apartment. So it's really up and down is the answer. It's my answer, but I do think it is the answer for most people that I know.
Well, yeah, but where do you get all the money to buy? I saw you on these red carpets with all these fancy gowns and $1 million necklaces and stuff. They just given to you?
Oh, Tom, those $1 million necklaces are H&M knockoffs. So let's be real. The carpet events are very fun. There's all ways around it. I own some pretty dresses, but there's also these great websites like Rent the Runway and whatnot. And the red carpet events, especially for things like film festivals and premieres or whatnot, that is sort of the reward for doing all of the hard work. You're invited to attend, and then it's your way of promoting the film, and it's their way of sort of giving back.
Yeah, but I see you work in the Greek thing it says 8 years you volunteer. How do you find time to volunteer to run a Greek festival?
I don't sleep, Tom.
Yeah, sleep is overrated, really.
Sleep's overrated. Well, first of all, to clarify, I do not run the festival. I have always volunteered. I volunteer my time to mentor young filmmakers. I volunteer my time to collect tickets or help at the box office or whatnot. I've done that in all years prior, and in the last couple of years, I've moved into more of a robust role. Helping with some of the panels and helping sort of, be the face of women in entertainment, along with Patricia Cara and our other friend, Elena, who's a terrific and beautiful actress. And so the three of us have kind of, stepped up to sort of, help the festival and promote women in entertainment specifically. And we'll be moving into sort of more advisory roles and whatnot. But the reason I make time for that is because, first of all, it gives filmmakers from Greece a platform they wouldn't otherwise have. A lot of these filmmakers are really beautiful filmmakers, writers, producers, cinematographers, and they don't have the exposure that we do. So it gives them exposure to an American audience, and the festival tries its best to offer some guidance and get them general meetings at different studios and companies and teach them about representation and that sort of thing. And so that's that alone is near and dear to my heart, but even more than that, specifically females trying to do it, because I know how difficult it is. There is a huge gender disparity. I'm a firm believer in Time's Up, 50-50 by 2020. Every hashtag you can possibly mention, Me Too, all of it are all things that I have experienced firsthand and have become a strong advocate for women. And so for me, LA Greek Film Festival sort of ties all of these causes together. And so that's why I like putting energy into it.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, you're a dynamo. That's for sure.
Oh, thanks.
She was. Yeah.
I've had a lot of coffee this morning.
So, so speaking of this morning, what's a typical day look like? Will you get up? Do you exercise? Do you eat? What, you go to meetings? What's a day look like for you?
Sure.
Or give us a couple ones when, if you're on a certain project, what's that day look like? And if you're just sitting home and you have to write something, what's the day look like?
Yeah, so they can look starkly different from one another. First of all, I am a huge believer in strong body, strong mind. So I usually wake up and do a meditation exercise, try to avoid my phone because I was guilty of this up until recently phone is the last thing I look at before bed and the first thing I look at in the morning. So wake up and do some breath work and some meditation, and then usually followed by a really nice breakfast. I make the time to sit and have breakfast and coffee, even if that means getting up, at the first crack of dawn. That is my alone time and my time to sort of center myself and get ready for the day.
And you still haven't looked at the phone yet?
No. I'm looking at the phone.
I know. I knew.
Yeah.
That's illegal. That's illegal not to look at the phone.
Yeah. Oh no, that lasts a whole of 5 minutes. Yeah. And then I definitely get in a workout, whether I'm doing some sort of circuit training or I love yoga, boxing, Soul Cycle. Soul Cycle is my weakness. I love it. It's just so much fun. It's like having a dance party, and everyone's very charged up in that room. So, or a hike or whatnot. I always try and get in something first thing in the morning. Obviously, come home and clean up. And
what part of town you live in?
I live in Larchmont Village, Hancock Park area. It's right by West Hollywood, and it's pretty central. So I can get up to the studios in the valley. I can get down to the beach. I can, it's pretty central. Although it doesn't matter because traffic is traffic here.
Right.
So, and then like for now, for example, when Will and I were writing this story together from a dual perspective, neither one of us generally collaborates with other writers. A writer's room for a television series is a different ball of wax, but I mean, for features, I definitely, I never usually collaborate. And so in this case, we would usually take our mornings to ourselves to, do our exercise and catch up on emails and schedule meetings and talk to our representatives and whatnot. And then we would get together late morning. And for the last, I'd say since, late October, we would just be grinding all day. We would just, sit across from each other. We write in a collaborative, the newest versions of Final Draft, have sort of a script collaborator. So we would have the same document open and both be working within the document and talking out story. And we would go, we were joking. We were work husband and wife because we were eating all of our meals together and going grocery shopping together and all of it, because it's just, this was what we were doing all day, every day. And then go as late as we could possibly handle it. But the one thing we both agreed upon is no matter how hard we were grinding, we always needed to stop at a certain point in the day and just take a really, really long walk around the neighborhood.
So I keep chuckling to myself when I hear you say grinding, because, that could be taken in more than one way.
Oh, Tom, get your head out of the gutter.
As soon as you said that, I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Okay.
It's a different kind of thriller, not a psychological
I guess
thriller.
So. Yes. No, not in this case. This is just, all I mean is working hard.
Working hard. Oh, okay.
Working hard. So, yeah. So that's what this has looked like. Obviously, when this goes to production, that will look entirely different. I know Will and I know his work ethic. Yeah, so Will is the type, once we're on set for this movie Ghosted, I know Will is not the type to ever take a day off. So he'll probably go 7 of 7 days. I will be with this production of Ghosted in some sort of capacity, whether that's writer on set or in a producerial role, yet to be determined. But I will try very hard to take at least 1 day a week away from set, or at least a few hours, just to not burn out. I know myself, and having those little check-in moments to recalibrate are necessary for me. And then there's other, when I was on Eat, Drink, and Be Married, that was a solo process. So my mornings would be the same, and then I'd be grinding all day, working hard all day. But then, I was also still working for Netflix at the time. So generally I would write from, say, 7 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, break for lunch, do all my reading for Netflix. And then I try to block schedule meetings in the afternoon. The morning tends to be a little bit more dense with traffic, and I'm freshest in the morning for writing. So, meetings sometimes for me, even when they're fraught or when, it's a nerve-wracking meeting or a pitch or whatnot, I try to do them in the afternoon, just because it's a different muscle, a way to blow off steam in a different way. So I do that. I try to block schedule those in the afternoon, but every single day looks different. Every day is packed. And it's not a 9 to 5, and it's certainly not a Monday through Friday. I mean, there's not one day that goes by during the week where I'm not sitting down and churning on something for a few hours. But that's another great piece of advice that I have for all, writers trying to come up in the business is you have to be a writer who writes. There are so many writers out there who will knock out 1 or 2 screenplays and then just get frustrated that nothing's happening. And the most successful writers I know, as soon as they're done with one thing, they're cooking the next. And even when they're working on that next thing, they're cooking 8 more ideas. And you do so much free work. There are probably, I don't know, well over 200 projects that I've pitched on that I've never gotten,
Wow.
So much free work, so much free writing, so much idea gestating that will never see the light of day. But it's a hit rate. Eventually you just keep going and going and going, and eventually one will hit. And so, I was happy to sort of cross that threshold a few years ago, and now I just have to keep proving my worth and my biggest next goal is to be hopping to the next budget level. I'm fitting squarely in the indie space right now, under $10 million movies. And, Will and I are talking about this one that will be, much larger studio film. And I want to get into the 20 to 50 range now. So all this to say, no day looks the same, but that's also what makes it so incredibly interesting, right? And exciting.
Well, I've got the the gazillion-dollar idea for you. I know I'm never going to do it.
I knew you'd pitch me. Here it comes. All right.
No, I don't know. I'm
stretch.
just giving it to you because I know I'll never do it, but it's the best idea ever heard of on Earth, of course. And so you talked about Batman, a studio you worked on that kind of did Batman or something a while back.
Yes.
So
Atlas Entertainment.
All right. So this is a real quick. A Batman type guy made a fortune on the internet, throws a big contest for virus writers, and then gets them all in one place, like $1 million prize for the best virus they write, and then he kills all of them. See the reaction you got? The end. Yeah, you'd be the hero of the whole world. See?
I guess so.
See?
I know.
And
it's so topical right now with all of these deadly viruses.
Exactly. See? So that's the idea. It's all yours. You can have it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. What a gift.
But I want. See, the darn thing is, I was up for a part in the remake of the Blob. And that's actually true.
Oh, stop.
I know.
Really?
I am totally serious. The lady's husband that did the original Blob, I helped her save one of her organizations. I did a fundraiser and saved her organization. And so I said, the only thing I want in return is I want the anything part in the remake of the Blob. I said, I'll blow that up for the rest of my life that I was in the Blob. And so
that's amazing.
They're still trying to sell the remake, but that's going to be my claim to fame right there.
Oh man, it's coming.
I said, I'll be the Blob. I'll be whatever you want. Just let me say
What are you going to wear? But what are you going to wear on the carpet?
The Blob outfit, of course.
The Blob outfit,
yeah,
exactly.
It's going to be, who are some of the big designers that do Blob?
I think Tom Ford is thinking about that.
There you go. See?
Exactly.
So I'll wear Ford, yeah. So thanks so much for taking the time to give us a picture of the kind of life that you lead. And for any of you young writers out there, just figure, 18, 20 years, you start getting shots.
Oh, Tom, thank you so much for having me. This was such a blast, and I'd love to come back and continue the story with you.
We want to hear about when these shows come out, because now I got to worry about this, all these the psychological thriller, what could happen. Yeah.
I know it, especially revenge tales. And just to end on a more positive note, yes, it did take me a very, very long time, but to all the young writers out there, same piece of advice that was given to me. If there's nothing else that you can do, if there's nothing else that you want to do, then do this and know that it's going to be hard, but just keep writing every single day and eventually you'll get there.
There you go. Now, do you write on a computer or freehand or what?
I write on a computer. Sometimes I'll voice dictate if I'm walking or have some idea in a random place. I'll just get it down really quickly on my phone. But generally, me and my MacBook are a unit. We're pretty tight.
Did you write down the Batman idea I just gave you?
I actually took it down as you were saying it.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So is there a place online they can look at your stuff? Do you have a website or what how do they?
I don't have a dedicated website, but I do have an IMDb page, so people can see just my produced credits, not the other things that I have sold or set up, but my produced credits are on there, and you can follow along. Eat, Drink, and Be Married updates. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Lia Boz, LIABOZ, where I give a lot of updates on my shows and things coming up. And, and hopefully we'll just keep growing and expanding. And the Screw the Commute network, from what I understand, is very supportive of one another. So I'm looking forward to checking out everyone else that you've been telling me about and hearing their stories.
Awesome. Yeah, we had Elena on here too. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, she was on here. So
very cool.
So thanks so much. And just keep me in mind when you're getting the Oscar for the Kill the Virus movie.
Yes.
and
You'll get a
invite
very
me.
special
I'll
thanks.
be your plus one. I'll be your plus one. I'll be able to sit up in the balcony somewhere.
Only
Very
if
good.
you wear your Tom Ford Blob suit.
Okay, that's a deal. All right.
Okay, good.
Thanks so much, Leah. Appreciate it so much. And everybody,
Thank you, Tom.
we will catch you on the next episode. See you later.
Awesome. Bye, guys.